my first encounter with KBY was about a year before when we were picking yeshivas, and we went to visit different yeshivas, and the family had some connection, I think, with the yeshiva already, Eli Klein, and so forth. And we had a very interesting conversation in which it sounded to me, I was young, maybe I didn't understand it, or like we were perhaps being offered to be privileged and placed in some very nice dormitories there. And my father was using his Yekesha Shkofa of no, they have to be treated the same as everybody else. And Eli Klein said something about a Dan, and I thought this sounds amazing, you know. and I got to yeshiva, and I think my very first lesson was try to get to the plaza. But Baruch Hashem, I remember arriving in the yeshiva, and the only comfort we had coming from Manchester is it was clear we were miles behind absolutely everybody in the yeshiva. The Israelis were ahead of us, the Americans. The only comfort we had, the Londoners were a bit behind us. So it was, you know, and then the Shurim were never written. And Baruch Hashem, you know, it was amazing. I remember still struggling in the first few weeks in yeshiva, and Rav Friedman coming up to me, and just the attention and the care for seeing a struggling bocher in the beginning was special. And as the years got on, I had that phenomenon that happens sometimes to bochrim. You got promoted to Rav Blachman's shir, and you arrived at Rav Blachman's shir, didn't have a clue what was going on. But unfortunately, my anova was not big enough to say I didn't know what was going on, so I was stuck for a few months. But it was a schus to move from shir to shir when Rav Stav started giving shir, and different shirim and different rabbeim, and over the years, growing from one rebbe after another. And I actually remember there was one winter when, you know, sometimes you get this where it's a little bit down, and Rav Blachman gave us some mussar, and he brought us all into a room, and he told us, Rebbe by Rebbe, what there was. And I remember just walking out that room thinking, he's so right. This one's a goin olam, and this one after another, and you suddenly realize what you're touching here is just something incredibly special. I was thinking what to say tonight, and Erev Shabbos, it struck me there's something very obvious to say, because there's being interesting, there's a pasuk in Eov, not that I'm a mumche in Eov, but there's a pasuk in Eov that says as follows, Ki lasheleg yoima hevei. Kodesh Baruch Hu says the snow should arrive on the ground. It was a snowy Friday, snowy Shabbos, and the Rambam uses that pasuk to unlock two of the most difficult psukim in Parashas Mishpatim. So I thought we can't avoid speaking about this. There's some important thing here, and those two psukim are, of course, when it talks about the it's the retrospective lefi, the pasuk lefi, the way Chazal learn and Rashi learns Ein Mukdam Uchabat Torah. We're going back to that Kedama, the introduction of Matan Torah. Vayiras Elokei Yisrael, they saw. I'm just reading the simple translation here. God of Israel, v'tachas ragal of kamaisi livnas asapir, and in what sounds like the heaviest anthropomorphism in Torah, they see the feet. The actions of his feet, that looks like this white or brick or sapphire or some kind of jewel. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't punish the elites of the Bnei Yisrael. Chazal say not here, but he does later. They see God and they eat and they drink. Very difficult psukim. Different. The Unclus learns that it's referring to the Kisei HaKavod, and it seems that Unclus is saying they're doing the right thing, they bring karbonis. Rashi says certainly they're doing something wrong over here, and each one. The Rambam dedicates, I think, 4 or 5 prokim scattered across the Moreh Nevuchim just to understanding these two psukim. And he builds it, the Rambam Shitta, which I think is very often misquoted. People say the Rambam says things are metaphors. The Rambam never holds something as a metaphor. He holds it as a homonym. Meaning, the Rambam holds never does a word appear in reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that hasn't already appeared somewhere else with the correct meaning for that. That's why he says, for example, the word tavnis, which is like the word tmuna, it's a representative, but it only ever refers to physical things, is never, ever, ever used by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whereas the word tmuna is, because tmuna can mean when you're representing something not physically. That's why we say tmunas Hashem Yabit. And so the Rambam goes on. And he takes each word of this pasuk, as he does with many other psukim, and explains. When it says vayar, they saw, or it used the word vayechza, yechzu, those are words that mean more than physical seeing. In Koheles it describes Ro'isyani belibi, when he talks about knowing much wisdom, he saw in his heart, and it's not physically seeing, he's grasping. but that HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Avram b'machazeh. It's not physically seeing, it's grasping intellectually. It's being able to put the mind and grasp. So what is happening over here, says the Rambam right near the beginning of the Moira, is they're trying to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is Tachas Raglov? And the Rambam tells us again. A regal, yes, it physically means a foot, but a regal also is a word used with a seemingly very, very different meaning in Torah. When Yaakov Avinu talks to Lavan, and he wants to describe to him and explain to Lavan that his wealth came because of Yaakov, the word he uses l'ragli, because of me. The word regal is to do with causation. Why it's to do with a foot is another issue. But it's a word that is used in Torah to mean something that causes something else. If they're looking at the tachas raglav, the regal, it means that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is causing in the world. So they're trying to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu via that which he caused in the world. In other words, they're looking into the world and seeing deeply that behind it is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So far, so good. What is the Livnas HaSapir? And here the Rambam has an interesting parak where he talks about the Livnas HaSapir, the property of the sapphire, and here it can't necessarily mean a sapphire, but a certain type of maybe diamonds or certain jewels whose color is lavan, is white, only in as much as light moves through it. It actually has no color whatsoever. And all it is absorbs from everything else. And what they've understood is what the Yavanim called the choyma, the primal choyma, what we might today call energy. There's a universe made of things that could take different shapes, different forms, different areas, and it has of itself no particular form. And they grasped, therefore, the deepest they can grasp about the physical universe. And they understood that it's some kind of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But then the Rambam tells us, at the end of that parak in the Moreh Nevuchim, he used a very interesting lashon, and he says that I understood all of this by learning something from Pirkei Rav Eliezer that I'm going to come to in another parak. And you have to wait all the way to the Chelek Sheni, and he quotes the Pirkei Rav Eliezer. It's a different nusach to the one we have. It's actually the nusach Teiman. But in that Pirkei Rav Eliezer, he speaks about this. The Medrash says, Shamayim ma'azeh makom nivra. How is heaven created? And it says, Ma'or levushay, the light of whatever it means, the levush of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the clothing. Oita arka salma. He took this light and stretched it and made shamayim. And then the Medrash goes on, Oretz ma'azeh makom nivra. How does Oretz come into being? Mishelek shetachas kisei kvoidoi. The snow, or presumably it's not snow, whatever this sheleg is, that's under the kisei kavoid, and quoting this pasuk, Hila sheleg yoyma havei haaretz. To the snow he says, not come to the ground, but become the physical world. And what the Rambam learns in this Medrash is this. He says, therefore, grasping physical things is not the way that we grasp spiritual things. You can't use the same, I'm elaborating slightly, faculties to grasp one from the other. Or to put it slightly differently, and this I think is the biggest side of the Moreh Nevuchim, pretty much mitchil avad soif. What the Greeks got wrong is this. They used their mental faculties to the absolute maximum capacity. And they thought deeply about reality and causation and existence. And the problem is this. When you're getting very abstract, there's one thing that limits you. You can only understand reality based on who you are. And if you ultimately are being enmeshed in physicality, no matter how deeply you think, you might think to the edge of physicality, you might think about energy, you might think about a lot of things, but in the end it can only reflect your lenses. If your lenses are colored, you can only see the world in that color. And to grasp, using the same philosophical mechanism, what allows you to grasp something spiritual is that you've developed yourself and refined yourself spiritually. And a person who hasn't achieved ruchnius in their own avodah, who hasn't achieved tahara, no matter how brilliant their brain is, will never be able to fully understand kedusha and tahara. They'll never be able to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Moshe Rabbeinu's gadlus, says the Rambam, is even when he reached that great madrega, you could see at the snare, he realized he was not great enough to fully grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He stopped looking. He knew where to pause. And that's why he was zoicha, through understanding what he still has to grow. Her understanding that even at Moshe Rabbeinu's darga, that level which the Maharal says was already beyond words, he still realized he has to work on himself, and finally he can achieve Utmunas Hashem Yabit, that which distinguished him from every other Navi. He could mamash grasp the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this week's Sedra, says the Rambam, the Atzile B'nei Yisrael, Nadav and Avihu, in the Psukim just before, in an earlier parak in the Moreh, says that in the Psukim literally leading up to this, we suddenly come And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives an instruction. Vel Moshe Omar Alei El Hashem. Come up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Atov, Aaron, Nodav, Aviv, V'shivim Miziklei Yisrael, V'shtachavisa Merochi. Come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'nigash Moshe Levado, but only Moshe got up there. And it sounds like it was an instruction which only Moshe kept. But the Rambam says no. They worked and they strove to come as close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but only Moshe Rabbeinu could get there. And what everybody else should have done at that moment is said, okay, we got more avodah to do. Our Dveikus B'Hashem can't deepen until we work on our own ruchnis on their incredible level. But they didn't. They tried to jump anyway. Vayiras Elokei Yisrael, and they grasped and they said, we're going to get it. We're going to get that Dveikus B'Hashem. We're going to get our minds there. And they grasped the deepest point you can get in physicality. And they made a mistake. And when you use your own flawed brain to try to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you physicalize, then it leads straight back into your own. What you're really doing is just projecting yourself onto HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're seeing reality through your little lenses, and what will come back to you is the very same thing. Vayochlu vayishtu. They went back into the Gashmis world. And that's why they get punished. And what the Rambam is teaching us is something beyond incredible, is that, I think, and he doesn't say this bit beferish, but the Seder Parashat Mishpatim is this. You've had Matan Torah in Parashat Yisrael. You've had revelation. But how do you grasp it? How do you prepare yourself? Moshe Rabbeinu can do it, but you can get it wrong. And the answer is, Ve'ele Mishpatim Shatosim Lifneim. These are the Mishpatim which you've got to put before you. It says Rashi at the beginning of the Sedra, don't think I'll just lay it like a Shulchan Aruch. I've got to give the ta'amim. I've got to let them learn, grasp, grow, be oisik in the sugyas. And one by one, the brain can align itself. That's what the Rambam says. You want to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you want to be Oyev Hashem. You can look at the world, but you want to know how to do that. You have to be oisik in Tam Mole Krisai, with Havayas Abayah V'Rava. You have to learn one sugya, and another sugya, and another sugya. And every time you learn, it changes that very physical brain. It changes that reptilian and mammalian brain, and the neurons, the brain itself, starts to align itself. The mind itself starts to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu a little bit more. I remember, time after time, I remember the walks we used to have. I still remember Rav Stav, when he first turned up in the yeshiva, and there were two things that made him very awesome. He was physically very big in the beginning, but he used to stand at the back of the Beis HaMedrash, and in those days, the Rosh Hashiva was unwell at the time, and there was a bit of, everybody was learning Bava Basra and a winter's man, and everyone had given up, a lot of people had given up trying to learn the whole of Bava Basra. In Bekiah Seder, it was mamash, every single Masechta in Shas was being learned somewhere, and there was a queue to the back of the Beis HaMedrash, and Rav Stav would be sitting there, and it didn't matter what you were asking in any sefer, anywhere. I don't know, you can be asking Kisar Rizal or something. He was answering one after another, and he was just, and I remember always thinking, I just need the guts to develop a kasha. Baruch Hashem eventually was Zoich, and he used to, after he had his heart attack and he used to have to go for walks, the best thing in the yeshiva was to go for a walk with the Rav. And not the best, sorry, that was one of the many wonderful things in the yeshiva. Many great Rabbeim, was great to get walks. But he had to walk every day, so you could be tofus that walk. We used to have a Seder who walked with him. And I remember him explaining to us time after time this concept. The why is Talmud Torah connected to Kulam? Because Talmud Torah changes you. And I think he used this marshal once maybe I got it in a conversation with him, that in any relationship, people ask you things you don't understand. They don't, this person, somebody you love, your wife, your spouse, your children, people you love ask you to do things that make no sense to you. And you could do three things. One is you can ignore them. And ignoring them means you don't really value what they value. That's not a relationship. Two is you can do what matters to them because it matters to them. And that's a serious relationship already. I don't get it, you like it, I'll do it. That's called na'aseh. But then you could do something even greater. You can say what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what you want whether I understand it or not, but I'm going to also try really hard to understand what you see in this, what you like about it. Because if I can get my brain to think about the world a little bit more like you, then everything I do can become a little bit more understanding you. It can shape who I am to be a kli to understand you. And being Oisik in Talmud Torah is shaping each one of you. That's what he said to us. That Oisik in Talmud Torah turns you into a kli to understand Ratzon Hashem. You want to get a chazaka and a miga and a rov and a sveka. You will, as Hashem, come out as a better makabel kibbud of aim, a more honest human being. If you're doing it right, it will shape everything about who you are. And when I think back to those years in KBY, and Baruch Hashem, I was zeicha to a lot of them, not just because I came a bit young and was able to stay for a few years, but also because I was zeicha to do a university degree where the first 2 years didn't count. So I was able to spend the whole of Beina University's Manim, which was most of the year, in the Rav Ilan Halberstadt, they had a mattress on the floor, and I used to be able to turn out. And Baruch Hashem, zeicha to spend so many years and feel, and I remember when we were finally leaving yeshiva, and we got sat down, and Rav Stav was always pushing us, you got to open the Beis HaMedrash in London, you got to open this Beis HaMedrash in London, you got to have a Mokum Torah for people to come back in London. And I remember when at the time of Dave Meyer just opened the Beis in Hasmonean, and he said how he spoke about he inspired by his time in Karen Biavna, we've got to have proper learning here in Hasmonean. And I remember when we came back in university, and then eventually with Zoicha, Rav Ilan came back and actually opened the Beis HaMedrash, the evening program, and the things that happened in this town to bring the Chashivas HaTorah. And Rav Stav sat us down and said, you can argue whether reverse lechatchila, b'diavad, lemaisa, if you're going to university, that's your mahalach, and that's what you've got to be ovid on. And what has to stop is this sense that people who go to work are somehow not constantly have a she'ifa to grow in Torah. And your avodah when you go back, if you've gained anything from this yeshiva, is all of you have to come back and drive into London and make it a place where she'ifa and Torah is something that is not for people in Kollel and Yeshiva alone. It's something for every Jew and every Balabais and everybody. You're always Oisek B'Torah. B'chol derachecha daehu. And Baruch Hashem, it's amazing. It's amazing to see what the Beis HaMedrash has many, and see the base in the evening here, see Chava after Chava, seeing around our table, seeing Chaverim who are Oisek B'Torah, who are really growing in Torah, each in different paths in life, but it's a remarkable thing to feel what we were zeicha to gain, and what the Kehillas gained, and what's happened as a result of this amazing yeshiva. And only be mevarech the Rosh Yeshiva and Hala and everybody, that just like you gave to us, you should continue to have the koach to give to so many others, and continue to be marbetz Torah in every makom in the world, and that we should be zeicha to really, through this avodah and through all that we're doing, mal aretz de'as Hashem, to be zeicha to be mheira v'yameinu. Amen.